August 5th, 1966. An Atlanta outsider opens Caesar's Palace with a $10.6 million loan from the Teamsters, inventing the Vegas fantasy millions flock to. But just months later, Sarno's triumph is ripped away in a secret sale, his empire already under threat. How did the man who built palaces for regular people lose everything to financiers and the mob, while billionaires cashed in on his dream? Roman columns rose against the Nevada sky, fountains splashed under the desert sun, and the Strip stood still. On August 5th, 1966, Jay Sarno, Atlanta tileman turned dreamer, unveiled Caesar's Palace to a city that had never seen anything like it. Guests poured through the marble entrance, past imported statuary and gold leaf ceilings, into a world where every detail declared that you are royalty tonight. Sarno's sketches had become a living fantasy. Oval rooms with no right angles, split-level suites gazing over the neon, and a pool modeled after Pompeii, carved from 8,000 pieces of Italian marble. Toga-clad waitresses glided between tables, serving champagne by the case. There were no clocks, no reminders of the outside world, just the promise that, for one weekend, the regular guy could feel like Caesar himself. More than 1,400 guests filled the casino that first night. Sarno and his partner Stanley Mallon watched as the crowds pressed in, the buzz of possibility echoing through every corridor. For a moment, it seemed the palace belonged to its creator. Just months after Caesar's Palace stunned Las Vegas, the ownership deed changed hands. On paper, Sarno was still the face of the palace, but behind closed doors the pressure was relentless. Bookies circled, gangsters demanded a cut, and the Teamsters' pension fund, the same money that built the dream, became a leash. Clark County records show a transfer in 1969 to Lums Incorporated, run by Clifford and Stuart Pearlman. The price was $58 million. It looked like a windfall, but the reality was more like a forced retreat. Sarno's name faded from the ledgers as the Pearlmans took control and rebranded as Caesar's World. The palace that once belonged to its builder now served new masters, while Sarno watched his Roman fantasy slip away. The man who made regular folks feel like emperors was already losing his crown, not to a rival, but to the very system that had let him build in the first place. The money that built Caesar's Palace did not come from Wall Street or local banks. It came from the Teamsters' Central States Pension Fund, a pot managed by Alan Dorfman with connections reaching all the way to Jimmy Hoffa. A loan of $10.6 million, file number stamped on the ledger, funneled straight from union workers' retirement savings into the Nevada desert. On paper, it looked like a miracle, capital when no one else would lend to a casino operator. But every dollar carried invisible obligations. The Teamsters were not silent partners. They expected loyalty, favors, and sometimes more. Sarno's handshake with Dorfman meant his fantasy palace was mortgaged not just to a lender, but to a system built on favors and fear. The pension fund ledger, thick with signatures and coded notations, became a quiet record of risk. Sarno's dream rested on money that could be called in at any moment by men who did not take no for an answer. October 1968 brought a new kind of spectacle to the Strip. Circus Circus opened its doors with a promise no other casino dared make: fun for the whole family. High above the blackjack tables, trapeze artists soared back and forth, their shadows flickering over rows of slot machines. Clowns juggled, acrobats spun, and every hour brought a fresh act overhead, free, just for wandering in. Sarno, ever the showman, played ringmaster in a palace of noise and color. For parents, $2 blackjack signs beckoned, Vegas action at a price the working man could afford. Kids pressed against the rails, eyes wide, as a baby elephant wandered past the roulette wheel. But the magic ran into trouble almost immediately. There were no hotel rooms, just a casino and a circus tent, forcing families to find beds elsewhere. The place buzzed with energy, but the cash registers did not keep up. Critics scoffed, calling it a madhouse, a gamble too far. Still, for a brief moment, Circus Circus belonged to the regular folks. Every laugh, every gasp, every cheap hand of blackjack was Sarno's rebellion against the velvet ropes and high-stakes tables. Yet, behind the curtain, the numbers did not add up. The ringmaster was already sketching his next big idea, searching for a way to keep the show alive. Blueprints for the Grandissimo sprawled across Jay Sarno's desk. Sheets of paper crowded with towers, fountains, and a scale that dwarfed anything Las Vegas had ever imagined. 6,000 rooms, stacked skyward in a single, colossal structure. Historians would later call it the lost turning point, the moment when Vegas could have leapt a decade ahead of itself. The Grandissimo was not just big. It was a city under one roof, with a casino, showrooms, restaurants, and shops that would swallow a football stadium whole. The sketches show a property designed to make every guest feel like a star, no matter their bankroll. Sarno planned winding corridors lined with murals, a lobby that mimicked a European plaza, and entertainment spaces built to rival anything on the Strip. The mid-1970s target date sat circled in red ink, a deadline for a dream that never escaped the drawing board. Every detail in those plans, every grand arch and chandelier, carried the promise of a new Vegas. But the bigger the vision, the heavier the shadow that followed. The Grandissimo would become the blueprint for a future Sarno would never see, and for fortunes he would never touch. In 1974, federal prosecutors filed charges against Jay Sarno, accusing him of offering the largest bribe in IRS history. The indictment landed with a thud. The case file was stamped, and headlines whispered that the king of Vegas was now a criminal defendant. Sarno admitted to making the payoff, saying he acted on the advice of his attorney Oscar Goodman, a name that would later loom large as Las Vegas mayor. The courtroom became a battleground, Sarno's every move dissected by government lawyers and reporters hungry for a fall from grace. The trial dragged on, the threat of prison hanging overhead, but in the end, the jury returned no conviction. On paper, Sarno walked free. In reality, the damage was done. The gaming board, banks, and potential partners closed their doors. No one wanted to touch a man tainted by federal prosecution, even one found not guilty. The man who built palaces for the people was now blacklisted, watching his dreams wither from the wrong side of the velvet rope. Kirk Kerkorian opened the doors to the original MGM Grand in 1973, boasting more rooms than any hotel on earth, and a Hollywood fantasy that drew headlines across the country. The blueprint was familiar, massive scale and themed spectacle. Every guest treated like a star. But this time, the man who wrote the playbook was stuck outside the velvet rope. While Sarno's vision gathered dust, Kerkorian's MGM became the hottest ticket in town, raking in profits that dwarfed anything Sarno ever saw. Over at Circus Circus, Bill Bennett and Bill Pennington took over operations through a lease in 1974, and then bought the whole place outright in 1983. They turned Sarno's struggling carnival into a cash machine, floated it on the stock market, and pocketed fortunes. The same ideas Sarno had championed, accessible fun and fantasy for the masses, now lined corporate pockets. Regular folks kept coming, but the man who built the dream was erased from the credits, watching as others cashed in on a city he had invented but could no longer enter. Jay Sarno died on July 21, 1984. He was 62 years old and Las Vegas barely noticed. There was no tribute on the Strip, no front-page headline, no grand obituary in the Review Journal. The man who dreamed up palaces and circuses for regular people slipped away almost unmentioned. His name left out of the city's official story. Caesar's Palace and Circus Circus kept raking in millions, But their creator died owing money, erased from the credit rolls, while his ideas made fortunes for others. For years, his passing was a blank spot in the archives, a few lines in the back pages, if that. So, here is the question. Did you ever walk through those marble halls, or watch your kids stare up at the trapeze, never knowing who built it all? If you remember the old Vegas, your memories are Sarno's legacy. Now it is up to you. Share your stories about Caesars, about Circus Circus, about the Vegas that once belonged to regular folks. Do not let the city bury him for good. If we forget Jay Sarno, we let them erase all of us. Submit your memories. Help us fill in the record they tried to leave blank. Vegas still cashes in on Sarno's blueprint. Billions in corporate profits. But no credit for the man who built the dream. When a city forgets its real founders, it rewrites who belongs. The next time you walk those neon halls, ask yourself whose story gets erased and who profits.